Morning, everyone. Hope everyone had a good weekend. Hopefully you weren't thinking about trading too much. I know sometimes as a trader, you just can't wait for Monday. Just getting the last couple things set up here. I just find sometimes Monday, I come back and I'm like, what am I doing again? What is my strategy? So in light of that, I'm going to just review a trade. I think the winning trade from not last week because I didn't really take anything. And of course, hopefully this week is a little less choppy than that week. Is this the one I'm thinking of? Yeah, this one. Just looking at, this is an old recording, so this isn't a real trade. But just looking at how nice this thing slowed down and looking for, you know, like a double bottom, a nice clean break of structure, and then filling. Definitely a spot where I could see interesting, wondering of how to scale in if I wanted to, but or just do larger size because it just sets up so cleanly. I think some trades are going to be, you know, you can tell right away that it's like, okay, I just need to do larger size, or oh, I'm kind of seeing I could wait. But that's that. And then of course I have my more new entry style, and I'll keep that on the side. See what we got going on for the markets. Pretty good gap up over the weekend. Look at the, pull up the more bigger picture first. Look at a daily first as usual. We've broken this, I mean, pretty cleanly. I mean, I would say that's like the big major support right now. You got here, and then we tapped it twice. And then it's like, okay, do we do just a little fake and we pop? Or are we still, I mean, there's just this pretty clean downtrend we're right now in. I mean, it's kind of like a channel almost. You could draw it maybe from up there. Either way, I mean, definitely clearly downtrend wise with just the lows and just looking at the swings. I mean, on a 60-minute, I guess this would be the more recent trend to see, do we pop up today and hit this? I will say this is a pretty nice, like, head and shoulders bottoming pattern to pop this. That looks like a pretty good bottoming pattern. there's not crazy room from here to here, at least on a bigger picture scale. Like we've already, I mean, this is clearly already done a 50% pullback of this move down. If you did this whole move down here, it's still pretty much already tested that. I guess this was after here. We haven't fully tested it, but basically we're there. Definitely like a little minor resistance zone here. Is there a way to know if the market's going to gap up or down Sunday? No. Not that I know of. I mean, I don't trade that, but like, you know, that's just figuring out what's happened over the weekend and being able to figure out if the price, you know, needs to go up and down based on that, you know. To me, that's trying to like figure out earnings, you know, what is the market going to do after earnings? We did have earnings of, what was it, Google and Tesla last week. That's definitely like, I think, spooked the market a little. But we'll kind of see how this week, this week is big for earnings. Also news, just looking at this, we have Fed fund rates this week too. Wow, so this week is crazy. We had GDP. I don't have. Let me just get it from AI real quick. Or. Right, here's just a couple of them. We have Meta, we have Microsoft, Apple, Amazon. I don't know where NVIDIA earnings are. NVIDIA earnings all the way in August, so it's not August right now. That's weird. Why is it so late? But we have a crazy amount this week. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are going to be pretty big. And then the fact that Wednesday has Fed rates as well is going to be pretty crazy. First time on the live stream, welcome. Could we also recover this? I think someone mentioned we totally could. I mean, I think if we go to the downside, definitely giving that back up makes sense. I kind of like this on a 60-minute, especially the fact that we're at this large support level. I mean, we're at basically this double bottom here. We bounced there again. We tried to bounce there on Friday. I believe, no, Thursday, I believe that was. And then kind of just had some crappy movement to break a new low. And then a pop back up. So I think I would, a stab lower into this area. And if that held, I think I would look for a long. Just with thinking that big picture has pretty good potential to go up. And obviously, if we pop up here, and maybe this is kind of a resistance zone here, actually, on a 15-minute chart over here, like we got this kind of bottom, you know, popping up, testing that, and then selling off, lines up pretty good with this major downtrend here. So we'll see how that plays out. On a weekly, we're still just kind of, looks like we want to do this. And that might happen next week, or Wednesday and Thursday with, you know, all the news coming out. That could totally happen. Oil. Wow, oil's had a pretty crazy move over the weekend in terms of getting a little too excited here and then reverse back. Seems like oil is going to be kind of going into some choppiness again. It could sell all the way off, but, you know, with just increased news, seems kind of less likely. What does the ES look like? Wow, that S&P 500 is just in such a bull flag on a weekly chart. Going to a daily chart. It's kind of still got this uptrend line. Either way, just choppiness. Let me get my my smaller time frame chart set up. The website I use for news is called Forex Factory. It's free. Just gives the main ones. You know, the main, like, what do we have? I didn't look at what we had this morning. Let me pull that back up. We got pretty minor ones. Consumer confidence might have a little something, but it's pretty minor. Oh, that's tomorrow. So there's nothing today. We had super minor release pre-market, but yeah, there's nothing today. Sometimes that always gets me because I just see it light and then I don't realize, oh, 8:15 is the next one and that's already passed. So that means it's tomorrow. At the moment, I would say I don't really like anything at the moment. I want to see us move in one of the directions that I was talking about into the bigger picture. Because right now, I think we're in a little bit of no man's land. We could just, you know, there is this kind of head and shoulders that could start to play out. But to me, I don't see a spot to play long. There is this little guy right here. Give this back up. In terms of an unhealthy move, this looks pretty nice for that. And then you got a fake lower. Tricky part is it's going into the open, and I could see this could just start to chop. It kind of looks like it's doing that. Just because we have a gap up over the weekend, there's still oil kind of going crazy. You know, that could cause some volatility at the open. Which days do I trade live on YouTube? 4 days a week, Monday to Thursday. Pretty much, I start 30 minutes before the market opens. If someone's out of the country, can they use my platform? I think it depends on the country, but I think a lot are not available. So that's kind of the hard part. You know, and I don't have a great option. As a replacement, I think it's kind of, you know, you got to see what's available in your country because there's so many different ones out there and it really depends on where you're at, what's available. Actually, a new thing that is out this morning with NinjaTrader is they just released. I think I was talking about this like a tiny bit. I didn't really have too much information on it, but they just released single stock futures. And so I don't know a crazy amount about it yet in terms of if your account is already set up with it, if you have an existing account. But this is like a complete new release across the US, I think, of single stock futures being available to where you can literally trade, NVIDIA, Tesla with futures instead of stocks or options, which is definitely a very cool way, I think, to probably start a small account. I think I've seen you can get like 6x leverage on stuff. So actually, I have a link for that if anyone wants to check that out. I need to look at it myself today. This is kind of what they have. But it's literally just the same thing as, trading options, but you trade futures instead, and you don't have to deal with. I mean, that's the whole reason why I switched to futures over options to begin with, is you don't have to deal with all the annoyance of options. I don't know what's available fully yet, though. I think it's mainly large companies. I'm trying to see if they have what is available on here. I think it's mainly just like Mag 7 and stuff. How will single stock futures be different than options? I mean, it's just the same way normal futures are different than options. You don't have theta, you don't have premium, you don't have all the Greeks. It's literally just, I would say like futures normally on the indexes are the simplicity of trading stocks, but the leverage of options. And obviously, like, I don't know, like the, I'm sure there's margin requirements, and obviously, because like, just like one contract, you're getting 100 shares, and so like 100 shares of something like Amazon, like what is Amazon trading at? Like 200, and so that's theoretically, if you were gonna buy 100 shares of Amazon, that'd be $23,000, and so just to get one contract of that worth of movement, I have no idea what the margin requirement is yet. I'll try and get some more information on that and do some digging myself. But I know it's like they probably have like intraday margins and stuff like that too. So put a link for that one more time. But that just came out this morning. I literally woke up with an email from them because obviously I'm partnering with NinjaTrader, so I want to learn some more about it myself too. And I wonder if they'll have like micro versions. Let's see, a couple more minutes before things open. Hope everyone had a good weekend. On Friday, I went and climbed a mountain that was, God, it was insanely long. It was just a hike in terms of technicality, but I think it was 25 miles round trip with 7,500 feet of gain and then loss. We started at like 2 a.m. and then ended at, I think, 4 p.m. or something. It took us like 14 hours. So I just spent half the weekend just recovering from that. What gets me the most is just the crappy sleep of like sleeping 4 hours, the night before. And obviously my legs are exhausted, but there was no like crazy overall soreness, which felt good. Are there serial killers on the hiking trails at 2 a.m.? Funny enough, like 30 minutes or less into the start, we ran across these two guys that had no headlamps on. And so they were coming down the trail. They had no headlamps on. And so it was kind of weird. And then one of them was like clearly drunk, and maybe the other guy was high or something, and they were just yelling at us that we were like starting, behind the ball, that they just did the whole peak, and that they just bear sprayed a bear 300 feet up the trail. And the guy was like being goofy about it, and it's like, there's no way that if you just bear sprayed a bear and had a fight with a bear in the night with no headlamp, that you would not be freaking out and be flustered. And so we called BS and, figured that they just were drunk and went for like a small nighttime hike, because they were just, in casual hiking gear. They had like a school backpack. And, being goofy like that. So, but it was definitely like a little unsettling almost. Anyway, market's about to get started. I'll just quickly run through things, what I'm seeing this morning for people that are just showing up. Now we are at a big resistance level. We're still at this area. Now, we've already broken through it, and so I think potentially, we could just be popping up here, testing this, and then continuing the trend lower. Like, there's total reasonable, thing to say that we're continuing lower. We could try and fill this gap up. Also, I do see there's a little potential for head and shoulders to form, and there's this unhealthy move right here to pop that. Now we could pop that, hit this downtrend, and also hit this, old support level that could turn into resistance, and then reverse from there. I think on a daily chart, we're still we're just in a sloppy downtrend at the moment, and we have so many earnings this week in terms of Mag 7 companies. But also we have the Fed rates coming out this week, and so that always causes some volatility. So I think this week has the potential to recover this if what comes out the market doesn't like. Is the website version of NinjaTrader as reliable as the app? I would say no. A standalone thing is always going to be better. Plenty of people use it, but I haven't used it myself personally to where I would, I would suggest you can use it every now and then, but I would always suggest trying to use the main platform. It's way better. So that's kind of the big picture of what I'm looking for today. Ideally, I would like to see either a spike lower, maybe test this level, test the gap for reversal, or pop up and look for a short, because we could just do this morning. But definitely need to wait for the market to open, see what's going on. It's Monday of a very news-driven week. So might be a little bit of hurry up and wait. We'll see. If you get a margin call, just ignore the call. Don't answer. I don't think it'll work like that. Getting some volatility before we even open. Just gonna change my music here. Something a little more chill. As always, I want to see an unhealthy move and that line up with the support zone and really the big picture. And right now, even though we have this big support zone here, the recent range is this, and so it'll really depend on how we set up in the middle here. I'm unlikely to want to take something. The hard part is seeing that this head and shoulders here, bigger picture could play out. So kind of see how it sets up, how the initial candles open to kind of get a feel of what the market is acting like this morning, because I think that'll be important. Last profitable trade, I think it was not last week, but the Thursday before. And then I only took one trade last week, which I regretted taking. It was a little too FOMO-y. I'm trying to really focus on the side of patience right now. And even if that patience is a lot of just missing moves, I really want to get back to my roots of only jumping in when it's super clear and I think looks really good, and just getting crazy size, and trading only a couple times a week. But the idea is with my size is, I don't care. It's almost like the idea of like swing trading is like some people, only take a trade on a daily chart, every few weeks or something, and almost thinking like that, but I'm doing it in an intraday time frame. And then if I just scale up to, risking a lot of money on them, you still make your enough money over time. The market's open now. We're getting moving. I was always going to see I think today is going to be see what the first 15 or 30 minutes really looks like. See what kind of move we do. The only thing would be how do we react to this? I kind of want to actually remove this big resistance zone, support zone. Just knowing that we're there, but I'd rather focus on this more recent range. I don't think that big resistance zone really helps at the moment. Trading feels overwhelming when you're first starting. That's just the reality. I mean, the learning curve is just so steep at the beginning the biggest thing is just, try and be simple about it, as simple as possible, and just show up every day and watch the charts. Honestly, that's the biggest thing. Is it just takes time. I remember like when I first started out, like I didn't looking at a candlestick chart. You're like, how do all these people see all these different things? And it's because it just seems like it's all over the place and random. And it just takes time to get used to looking at candlesticks. There's not, to some extent, there's not really a shortcut. The shortcut is that, compared to 5 years ago, there's way more knowledge out there that's helpful in speeding up certain things. But at the end of the day, it's a personal experience journey that you have to go on. I wonder if we hold here or we just rip this gap. The market's definitely been doing that, just off of the open, just popping a direction. It's like looking up 100-story flights of stairs. Just have to take one step at a time. Yeah, it's like anything, it's easy to overwhelm yourself if you have big grand plans for something. But anything in life that is worthwhile takes a long time and is a lot of effort. But you don't want to get overwhelmed and, lose hope over the short term. The long term, it's our whole world now pushes you to short term satisfaction. And honestly, long term satisfaction is where it's at. It's just, you got to be patient and work towards it. But once you start getting there, it's short term satisfaction can't touch it in terms of how satisfying it is. Well, we broke below the gap open. We definitely got a little accelerated here. In terms of 50% pullback, we pretty much exactly hit it. I don't know if you guys can see the wick, but the wick goes right to here. The green box is kind of covering that up a little. I think trying to see like, okay, do we have this? Definitely, I would potentially look for a bottom and a long here if we do some kind of double bottom or something, but this could just rip back up. And just be kind of an opening spike. Trying to look at, is it coming up to here and reversing lower, or here? It pushes a little higher. Those are two little minor supports on the way up that we might want to continue lower off of. Just waiting to see how this reacts now. That's a big candlestick up. Question is, does the entry down here make sense? I'd be betting that it does this whole move. It's not terrible. I think the worry is that it's given back such a huge move already. We're in the middle of the range. I think I want to still give it a little more time this morning. It just seems too likely to continue lower. This is such a spike higher that could just be getting flushed. We don't really have a break of structure. I would say, you know, we have this swing high, swing low. What are we going to do now? I definitely see the potential, but it's not fitting my checklist yet. And we're sticking to that. We're definitely at a little reversal zone. There is an unhealthy move. This is like a 50% pullback of this move, though, already. If this move down, it's already done that. I think it's better to see if we flush this by 10 a.m. Look for a long down there. Unless we set something up a little more clean here. Still just in the middle of the range, big picture wise. And it didn't really give enough of a spike up to look for a short. I think if it spiked up into here, I would have maybe looked for something. Because that would have been a nice pop to the upside. But it's just not at key levels that I'm interested in. I don't like playing in the middle of the range. So just kind of patiently waiting to see how far this wants to sell off and then look to see if that can reverse. Because if we sell off all the way down here, there'll be some good fair value gaps on the way back up. You'll know I enter because you'll see it on my screen. You know, it'll pop up like if you ever watch my YouTube videos, it'll look the exact same thing. Like it'll show where my stop loss is and entry is and profit target is. And then I will not be looking at the chat at all because I'll be looking at my trade and talking through the trade. The question is, what does a downtrend look like if this is just going to continue lower? I'm trying to think of like if it starts doing this, you know, just trying to see, okay, where is the potential trend line? Because sometimes we'll get a flush and then it'll start going like this, and then maybe we can start to look for a reversal. It'd be weird for it to bottom somewhere in here, because at least this time this had a huge flush down, and then we had a gap up here. So we had a big spike both ways. There is kind of some chop from this side of that move, but it does seem more likely. We're at 9:45, so 15 minutes into the open. Just gonna see this start stair stepping down. 15-minute, then I just have it on another screen, but you know, 15-minute, we're just kind of in no man's land. I always find it best to like, even if it looks like it's gonna bounce here and it does, there's just nothing here. You know, it's all about trying to think about, okay, where's the clean area where it's likely to bounce. Now it could be, what is a 50% pullback of this? We already tapped that. Yeah, actually earlier we already tapped that and bounced all the way up here, and that failed. So kind of we're doing this, even though it's hard to see on a 15-minute. That was this. This was the 50% pullback bounce, and it's clearly just not having any of that. So I'm just kind of sitting watching this on a 5-minute chart, see what the next few minutes show. How do I zoom out? I'm just clicking and dragging the X or Y axis. That's all I do. I'm trading the NASDAQ futures. Not much to do right now. Just be patient. That's how trading is sometimes. Better to no trade today. Just wait through reversal at the lows. Well, you know, we might get to those. I'm hoping we get to the lows by the time, you know, I'm still watching. Yeah, the overnight, the gap that we had up, that's just sometimes the weekend, you know. The market's closed for a couple days, and so, you know, we gapped up because the, you know, stuff happened over the weekend. But in reality, it's like, this is not that big of a gap up. This is 200 points. That's nothing. I don't even know. I haven't looked at this morning. Just of the actual percentage move on the day. Looks like we probably gapped up a percentage. And we've moved down. Oh, we gapped up more than 1%. So we've sold off 0.5% already, which is that's so typical these days. Is gapping up or down 1%. I'm just assuming this is in a downtrend until it clearly starts to slow down and reverse. If it started to set up something like this, that's tricky of how I would want to take a long on that. I mean, there still is... I mean, this is still a pretty good bottom. I mean, move down. Especially on a 15-minute. You know, it's kind of one move, another push. And if this is a head and shoulders, this bigger picture pattern right here, it would be bottoming somewhere here. Like usually the head and shoulders, like they bottom in the same area. And so that would be the only potential reason why I would think that, okay, maybe we bottom here. Because the big picture head and shoulders might take over. You know, that's kind of on a 60-minute, you can see that much clearer. You know, previous low, barely broke below it. And then we kind of have this bottoming pattern potential to give this back up. There's not that much of a move to give up, but, you know, could push us up to here if the market really wants to bottom, or just taps here and rolls over. But, you know, for me, for a little trade, like here to here is plenty. So I could see how that could be, to me, I would say that is kind of a big picture. The resistance, the support zone seems a little weird in the sense that it is in the middle, but it is using that bigger picture. I think it just really depends to see how this acts. So I'm just going to check off all the big picture stuff here. At the moment, though, for like a break of structure, haven't really done that yet. You know, we're slowing down here, but probably a small size long, if anything. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's. It's definitely not a spot where I'd want to put big size on. I would prefer for it just to continue lower and look for something down here. But I look at these other options to be like, well, I never know where the market's going to bounce, right? Like it could have bounced here, it could bounce here, it could bounce here. And so it's trying to just see, okay, what do I see in the market that makes logical sense? So that if it does look to start to bounce here, is there a reason that it makes sense that, you know, makes it, I think, worthwhile enough for me taking a stab? But we also could be in this down channel here. That's kind of the downtrend I was thinking about earlier, where we kind of get going and then it just kind of starts getting more of a healthy move down. But it's just kind of being sloppy right now. We do have news at the top of the hour, but I don't really think... Oh, no, we don't. There's no news today. Yeah, like right now, this is, especially since the open, if you think about the move since the open, it's not that unhealthy. And it's much more of a bigger picture slow bottom versus like if we sell off all the way down here and really start to accelerate, that to me is much more of an unhealthy move, and I think we have a better chance of doing a bottom. But right now, it's this downtrend doesn't look crazy unhealthy. Even on a 5 minute, you know, it's like it still definitely is somewhat unhealthy. You know, it's not this where there's big pullbacks. We're just kind of getting some fast movement. But it's not this. Like, this is a super clear, like, this is like, okay, I'm going full size kind of unhealthy move. You know, it's just boom, boom, boom. And then it literally sets up like a little double bottom, a head and shoulders, and then it just pops. You know, this is overnight action, so sometimes it looks a little better. But like in terms of just what a really clean setup would look like, this I would say is it, you know. Super clean sell off, and then we bottom, and then it just pops. You know, even though this was an overnight gap, it's like, well, it still just gave this whole unhealthy move back up. And that's definitely more of what I want to look for. This is a healthy move. It's filling the gap up. It totally could be, but you know, on the flip side, you can have it go both ways. Like this unhealthy move down, this gap up, you could say, was filling this unhealthy move. And so now we're doing the reverse of that. And so that this is an unhealthy move to that downside too. I don't think it puts it out of the scope of filling the other way again. But I think testing the lows here does open the door to breaking the lows because we are in an overall downtrend. But I think it's totally reasonable that we bounce here and, you know, maybe hit middle of the range or something and then continue lower too, because we're not in a fast-paced downtrend. All these moves down, even here, has a bounce before it continues lower. You know, that was like, what, Thursday or something last week? Or Wednesday, I don't remember. But it's unlikely we just pop here and then pop again. You know, that's a huge down move. That's like a 4% down move in a day. It's possible, but it's in the current market climate we're in, that's unlikely. You know, we've just been going back and forth very, very consistently. The red and green boxes are a basic example of what I consider an unhealthy or a healthy move. If it has one of these boxes from a fair value gap indicator, it's an unhealthy move. That it's a free indicator on probably pretty much any platform. And it just helps identify where, you know, we have a big move up. Well, a lot of time it counts as it can really be a magnet to give that move back up. Gonna delete some of these levels. Coming to 10 o'clock and we're getting very near the lows here. I'm actually gonna mark the upper section of this just to see kind of when we tap that. Because I think, you know, that's kind of the top of the lows. So we really could bottom anywhere in there. And this is definitely accelerating. I think an acceleration and break of the bottom of this channel would be great. If it really pops, gets overextended, then we could get something, a quick reversal. We're pretty much tapping it. We'll see how this how this looks like it bottoms. Now, if it doesn't break this down channel, you know, I still need to see a break of structure. But I would say we have a nice unhealthy move to the downside. We're at a reversal zone. Big picture trend, I would say, I think it is a little more to the downside, you know, especially on a daily. This does look like it might want to just pop lower. But on a smaller time frame, you know, we could still do this. I think there's still so much back and forth potential. But I definitely think we're opening up the door to break the lows and continue lower. You know, in terms of entering long here, you know, I'd want to see something like this would be very nice. In terms of like big unhealthy move down, we start to slow down, and then we do like a much of a final stab lower, and then we start to break structure. But if it's just going to continue to sell off, then it's just going to continue to sell off. The indicator is the fair value gap indicator. Also, if anyone missed it briefly earlier, NinjaTrader came out with single stock futures this morning. I'll put a link for it in the chat. This is like new in the US completely, of like being able to trade like Amazon and Google and Tesla, stuff like that, with futures contracts. I don't know a crazy amount about it because it's totally new. But definitely need to check it out myself. I think it's like the same thing as like, you know, why futures I think are my favorite is like they're options without, you know, the annoyance of Greeks and all that garbage. Still trying to see if this breaks the lows here of this channel. Because if it doesn't and it kind of bounces here and then comes back, I'm going to be more skeptical about going long. I think if it really breaks this and then really starts to show a cleaner reversal, to me that's better. Definitely unhealthy move to the downside on a 15-minute. What's the margin requirements on them? I honestly don't know. I would assume it's kind of a lot because, you know, buying 100 shares of a lot of these stocks is a lot. Like, you know, for Amazon, it'd be normally buying it to be like $23,000. How is this an unhealthy move when it's filling the overnight gap? Because it's just happening so fast still. You know, I try not to. I think trying to dive too much into that can overcomplicate it. At the end of the day, the markets move down quickly, and because of that, it can still reverse quickly. On the flip side, though, is, you know, if this trend is strong enough, we might just continue lower. And so I'm not going to jump in front of it unless it shows me, you know, that it's slowing down. We're definitely getting near these lows. You know, like if you think about trying to think of an overnight gap we had not long ago. I want to say this wasn't necessarily an overnight gap, but this was a move that happened overnight, right? Huge move up. I'm actually going to pull this up on a 15-minute. There won't be the fair value gap indicator because it's so far back. But we had a huge move up after hours. Then we, you know, so it's still overnight. To me, that's very similar to what we had today. And then the market opened and just reversed the whole thing all the way to the lows. And this was at this bottom tier at like 10 o'clock, 10:15. And then it popped up. And, you know, it eventually popped up and, you know, it kind of got sloppy for the day and eventually continued. But it still had this pop. And so all I need to do is capture from here to here, and that's a great trade, especially with how much volatility. I'm not looking to capture this whole thing. And so to me, that I'm seeing the same thing of like, we've pretty much given this move back up. We could go a little bit more. But if we just pop up here and then continue lower, and I can capture from here to here, that's still probably 2x. And it opens the door to capturing more depending on obviously what the market does. But I'm at least getting a good risk reward ratio. And then of course, if it just does this, well, then you've got a home run. Because in this market, anything's possible. But we haven't, we're still just, I'm not going to jump in this because it could just be this, right? We could just be doing this little sloppy sideways action. Having a little bit of a recovery, touch this, and then go lower. And if we double bottom and then break this, then I would look for an entry to go long. There's a few ways, just depending on how it acts. But because it's at this spot where I am looking for a potential reversal, I definitely want to be really looking for potential of a long. Like this could be a break-ish structure here. We haven't broken this downtrend. But sometimes like this downtrend can break after. But to me, that's a little FOMO. You're jumping in before this downtrend breaks because you're worried you're going to just miss the move, versus waiting for the methodicalness of, okay, it's broken that. It's, much more clearer. Because this is looking very similar to this move before. And if it makes a stab lower here and starts to reverse that and like pops up here and then pulls back, maybe that's something to look at. It'd be scary though of, this downtrend. It'd really depend on how it's set up. Sometimes I'm willing to break that kind of downtrend rule if the market's really showing that it's most likely breaking. And if this breaks the channel to the downside, to me that counts as a break as well. I wonder how much we're down at the moment. We're down over percentage on the day. Still just waiting this thing out. I mean, if it continued to flush and made a new low and then started to reverse, that would help break this down channel. And that would also just cause a potential liquidity sweep of the lows. Which definitely would be, I think, a good setup. the bounce is weak, would I get in? Probably not. I mean, the main thing is like looking for the break of structure at this point, because without the break of structure, I think you're just buying into the downtrend. It's just been going on long enough that that it's just not, you just don't want to get in front of it. Even if it's at a spot where it's like, I think it's likely to reverse. Until it like maybe does something like if it pops back up here, makes I think a new high to break structure, and then comes back lower, that's potential spot to look for a long. But at this point, it's so close to the lows that it just seems like a magnet that it needs to break the. This is just kind of being weak. It had a flush lower, and it should have popped back quickly if it was going to start showing some strength. If it just kind of sits here, it's more likely to just continue lower. And looking at what this downtrend is like candlestick wise, is we've had like a move, kind of sluggish pullback, and then a move, and then it started to actually accelerate here. Kind of went sideways, had another push. And so I think I think if we break this high right here, that's a good indicator that it could be reversing. But this could just be, right now it's just pulling back and just testing this previous low. It's just stair stepping. And as long as it's stair stepping, it's literally been doing that the whole time, going like this. And so if it doesn't break that, I think it's just going to keep going lower. I don't want to get married to wanting a specific thing to happen, like breaking the lows. Like it might not. Like it might be strong enough to pop and then pull back. And I think if it pops this, like if it does that, I would enter in on a pullback to here, because that would be a retest of this area and kind of a retest of this high. That would still be giving me great risk reward ratio. Even up to here is 3x. Like that's the market coming up to 24.79, like here, and that's just looking for basically a 50% pullback of this move. Even if the trend is bearish enough that overall we're going to continue lower, I can still capture a nice swing. But I don't want to jump in front of it yet, because this could easily just be a little bear flag here that continues lower. It's not showing. I think the way it's moving methodical enough this morning that I don't think it's just going to have a V bottom that rips. It's more likely to, and if it does, okay, so be it, I miss it. But like, there's so many spots here that if I was looking at trying to just buy aggressively, I would have lost at all these spots, And so it's better to just be a little safer and wait for something it's more likely to be methodical anyway, just because that's how it's acting, and then I can jump in and I think it helps keep me away from losses, but also increases my win rate. Well, I guess those two things are the same thing. Nothing really to read into on a 5-minute at the moment. I mean, it's just downtrending. Definitely just flagging out here. Seems like it's moved into a tighter downtrend. It could be something like this. I was kind of noticing that too. Usually it'd be like a 50% or the middle of the channel could be something. And either way, it's just kind of sitting here. Friday was a bear flag, then it reversed. It's definitely getting weaker. Like buyers are stepping in here a little bit, or sellers are getting a little, but it might just take some time to work through this and then it continues lower. Time will tell. Do I live every day? 4 days a week. I don't live Friday. That might have broken the lows by 1 tick. It did. Interesting. I think ideally if we pop all the way up here and then do a pullback, that would be a little better versus just like something sloppy. Because it's just weak right now. Starting to get ticked off, that probably means you should be done for the day. Or at least step away for 5 minutes. Coming up on 10:30. Definitely just turning into some choppiness now. Which isn't always the funnest to trade. I mean, it seems like it's just gonna If it just breaks lower, I don't even know if I have a level. If we just break lower, I have no clean support on the way down. We'd kind of be in no man's land. Trying to see if we do get any kind of reversal here. Otherwise, this is just a cruiser of a trend at the moment. It's getting into that area where I have a rule of where I don't look to reverse once it's just so strong to one direction. This definitely has some healthy moves here. You know, it's not a crazy flush like, I don't know if I have any good examples on 1 a minute. Overnight action. Like this on a 1 minute was pretty, on Thursday, I think. That's pretty good. But it just didn't hit anything special. I definitely want to see if this does pop here. Because we're at this spot. I think it's worth staying a little bit longer to see if that looks like it wants to play out. But if it's just going to stay in this downtrend, you know, it's not something I want to reverse. Feels like it's already 80 degrees in my office and it's barely 8 a.m. It's hard just watching a downtrend sometimes, just waiting, you know, for it to reverse. You know, it's like, oh, could it reverse here? Could it be here? Could it be here? But the big thing is, you know, not jumping in any of those spots and losing money. And I'm not looking for the short, obviously, because it's not my strategy. If we got more of a pop here, I would have. But like, to me, entering in here was just, you know, didn't fit my plan. We are accelerating here. I think the question is, does this acceleration signal the end? We've gone down over 1.5% now on the day. Like that's, I don't have ATR on my chart, but I'm sure we're over the daily ATR. Like we are overextended on the day. You know, I mean, this is on a 15-minute. This is a crazy move. On a 60-minute, this is a crazy move. $10.30. Well, that's the first candle that's blown out the bottom of the candle. It's not that much of a pop, but definitely could signal the bottom. But it's definitely getting in that area where we could just be in a big sell-off, and it's just not it. There's also, I just noticed, is this. This is a pretty nice downtrend that we could be testing right now. So I think that's a good little signal right there. If we are going to reverse, you know, we can always pop up here and sell off. That would be here. I think that's a blowout of the bottom of the channel. To me, that's a break of the channel. What can happen is it can just, that can signal the bottom. It could retest and then go. So I'm going to put that as a 1-minute trend broken. Still want to see some kind of break of structure, but because this could totally just be an insanely strong downtrend that we don't get very often, but they happen. But definitely that channel, that trend line I just drew from a larger time frame also lines up with this. Kind of see what the next 10 minutes looks like. If we look like we want to start bouncing here. I mean, this was definitely over acceleration. Unless we start to, you know, this kind of looked like that too. You know, unless we start to do something like this. But I think if this kind of starts to pop, like where it really accelerated was here. And so if we pop up here, it could just kind of do that. You know, obviously I could jump in there. I don't think I'll do large size because I think if I jump in with anything, the risk reward is going to be really good. And if it's right, you know, I can just pop this and get 3x with most of it and then hold 1 or 2 to see if we really reverse on the day. I think it's probably unlikely, but you know, on a 15-minute chart, this is definitely some big moves down. And then here we just have a big, this last one is big. And it might take a little bit more time to slow down and reverse as well. But I think we're definitely seeing signals of potential here. And if it wants to keep going, so be it. I don't think it's at a spot to buy yet. Where's the good news? It's not really about the news. It's just the fact that, just playing with essentially supply and demand in the market. Fundamentals only work so much. Like in a bubble, there's no fundamentals there. Could be it. Again, big picture, huge move down here that I consider could be unhealthy with the fair value gaps that are happening. Also, there's this downtrend line I like. But I think it's kind of waiting to see. I think we were in this downtrend channel for a long time. And usually how these trends happen, if they blow out the direction, is it's really getting overextended. And it's going to have to reverse at some point. And if it just kind of gets away from this area where I like, I might just lose interest. But it's not there yet. Your indicator is me closing the stream. Yeah, usually I'd close the stream kind of right now, and that might signal the bottom. So if I don't get off, it'll probably just keep going down. Now with this bounce, if it does, I don't think it's going to do this. I think this is a strong enough move that maybe it bounces some here and just continues lower. We're far enough here that it might just retest these lows. It literally could just do this and continue lower. I do think on a daily chart, we do look bearish. This does look bearish. Even before we had this move, we were already in this bearish downtrend. And I think it does open the door up to push down to this support level this week. I don't know if it happens this week, but I think it's opening the door price action wise to, and really that's a 50% pullback of this move. So in terms of a healthy pullback, that makes a lot of sense to me. But in terms of today, even if the bigger, super big picture is pointing down, does not mean that it's not going to pull back. Because it's just so overextended, it's likely to at some point. And it might just be reversing this big move down here because we haven't had a pullback here. But is it going to set something up? I don't know. I don't want to stay all day watching for it. We are at a psychological level here, 28,000. The ATR is at 150%. Yeah, I mean, we're on a smaller time frame, we are overextended. The market just hit down 2% on the day. That's the NASDAQ. Let me actually look at what the S&P 500 is only down a percentage, but that's kind of standard, just with how volatility or how the two markets are different. The VIX is popping up again, but it's not crazy high. Still not over 20. I think if this shows kind of a break of structure, I will take a stab. Just a small stab. Just with the idea that we might get a pop and I can just get something. With it still being at this trend line, you know, this trend line, I don't consider it broken because it's on a 15-minute chart. You know, it's a big picture trend line. It can totally wick and hold. And then, you know, I think the easy money is here. I think we pop up to here and we could have a pullback and continue higher if we are going to, or it pulls back here and just pushes lower. But we're in such a slog lower right now. It's almost holding the bottom of this trend line. That's crazy. This could also be something that, you know, reverses a little later today, reverses tomorrow, reverses overnight. I'm really trying to wait to see if this thing does look like it wants to reverse, because it really does. Price action wise, you know, we've broken the downtrend and really started to accelerate. It seems like it's at a spot that might do that, but it's starting to just get to a point where it's like, okay, I don't even want to touch this. You know, it's like any push higher is probably just immediately shorted. You know, it's like these kind of moves, they definitely signal a big move coming, but it doesn't have to happen right away, you know? The signal could take 5 minutes to develop. And maybe, you know, it's something that it's like you take a break for an hour and come back and see if something sets up. Usually the market respects the levels today isn't that day. Yeah. It is not. And I definitely would have liked it much more if it slowed down here and bounced pretty exact off of this. Like, to me, that was a good spot for a long. But now that it's doing this, I don't know. To me, that just makes it look so bearish that we might just continue lower. And I think a long is just not worth it at the moment. You know, there's always the little FOMO of like, well, what if I miss it, you know, and it does this. And, you know, that's always going to happen, right? There's always that possibility. But you want to try and focus on the more probable outcomes. Let's see how this, if this makes a pop here. If it doesn't, we'll see. Probably just call it then. I stayed much longer than usual. I mean, 15 minutes. I was just because this thing looks like, you know, if it was going to reverse, like it was still at an area, you know, it was really just bottoming. Like, I think it had a good potential to bottom here. That was like a time they liked. But seems like it's just going to slowly slug lower. It's just so interesting. It's like, oh, well, what if it just pops here and then it starts to show, you know? It's gone into this extremely tight downtrend right now. Might be getting a pop here, though. Just waiting to see, like, does it pop like here, break this structure? Because again, we could get something like this. At least give this, I would say, this part where it really started to accelerate up. But if it just pops here and kind of sells off, I want to still see it break a structure here. I don't think I want to wait for. I don't want to just enter in on a little pullback here. To me, that's, you know, too. Because we could just be making a lower high right here. So entering on a pullback here is just too aggressive. Maybe if it double bottoms here and then makes a new high and then pulls back, I could look to jump in. And if it's just V bottoms, the V bottoms. I'm not looking to enter in on that. It's too bearish to enter aggressively like that because it's so likely I just make a loss. You know, this is like, this move could just turn into a little pullback and it can continue lower. I don't care if I miss out on the move. I care about jumping in when I think it makes sense. Because that's the spot I think I'll make money. I think it's very easy to lose money right now on a long. I'm not really too worried about the upper side of this channel either. I'm going to drag it just to see. But we've already, you know, blown out the bottom. I think it's totally likely that the channel's broken. I think the previous swing is at least this guy right here. Maybe I'll jump in on a pullback of this depending on what it looks like. If it's strong enough. Definitely getting a little relief rally here at least. Trying to see what a trade looks like here. I definitely would consider this a break of structure in the sense of we're in such a tight downtrend right here. This to me is a break of structure. So I think if this does pull back, I'll jump in because it's pulling back to test this area. I think the risk reward is makes it worth it. You know, okay, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I think this is showing enough to signal that we might reverse. And I think the easy money is up to here. And if it just goes, it just goes. But there was no risk reward that made sense there. Now we could get a little pop here and a pullback. From the upper end of this channel. The hard part about these sometimes is because it's so overextended, it will just when it does pop, it just has a V bottom. But like this, you know, how do you compare this to this or this one? You know, like entering it on this would have produced, I think, at least 2 or 3 losses coming down at this level. So that's why I'm not entering in on those aggressive spots. Makes sense to top out a little bit here. First big candlestick, big bullish candlestick we've had on a 5-minute close. 15-minute hasn't closed yet. I think I'd enter in here on a pullback. You know, it might just give this little excited move up here. And of course it could just continue lower. I'm just going to go smaller size. Where I think the risk reward is pretty good if I'm right. But if I enter in up here, there's just the risk reward I think is just not good. Obviously in hindsight, if it just reversed the whole move, entering in anywhere makes sense, but I don't think that's going to happen today. I think it's more likely we pop up here and slow down. Just going to remove some of these trend lines. Remove this order. See if it's still going to pull back. Could still pull back here though. Could still get a pullback from here. And I like to enter in on a 50% pullback. So I'd enter here if it did pull back. blown out the other end of the channel. That's a good sign. Just gonna sit and wait. You know, if it fills me, great. And if it doesn't, it's just not setting up how I want. If it makes another push higher, it's starting to get too far away. You know, to where it's, again, I think the easy money is up to here. Like this, closing these fair value gaps. And I think if it just gives that back up again, I think that's kind of the easy move I'm looking for. I would love to jump it down here and have it do that. And then after that, you know, who knows? It could go up or it could go down. But it's getting away from where I would want to enter in on. You know, of course, there is the possibility that if it pops up here, it still fills more. Like a 50% of this move is a little bit higher, which is nice. That's 320. So that would be, I mean, that would pretty much be up here at 3R. This looks bullish, and it's like all I'm looking for is just a little weakness of a pullback to get a better price. Because again, you know, for people that don't know, like over time, I've had spots where it's, you know, I used to chase these moves a little bit once they kind of showed good confirmation. And just the risk reward there is just not worth it. And so, you know, I'm okay missing out on some moves with the idea that they weren't good math-wise anyway. And I'd rather just be patient and wait for these better fills because the risk reward is double. And I think the double risk reward is more profitable than missing some of the moves. Definitely something I'm still testing, but definitely staying a lot longer than I normally do, so I want to be aware of that. I don't think I'm being FOMO-y over this. I think it's just, you know, this is how the move's set up. You know, I'm just kind of waiting to see if it does set up how I want. And it's just a bigger move that's taking a little longer. But it's definitely getting to a spot where it's not looking great for a pullback potential. You know, if it pops all the way up here and pulls back to here, still not terrible, but it's definitely getting to where the risk reward is getting worse and worse. But I think I'm still okay doing that with the idea that, well, you know, it still could just pop more. And I can still be break even before the easy money is over. It's definitely just slowly grinding higher. Like this bounce is just kind of pretty crappy for volatility. You know, just no pullback is frustrating sometimes. But again, it's I don't like chasing that stuff because it's not good for me. I'm not good at it. I think at this point I'm just gonna call it. I don't think I think it's a little too far to look for a pullback. You know, the easy money is over. Again, like I would have loved entry here or even here. That initial where I had an entry, I think that was a great spot. But you know, it's just V bottoming in a very crappy way. Honestly, if I was long right now, I'd still be nervous because I think the bears could just come out of nowhere and just flush it lower. So it's gonna be a crazy week. We'll just see what happens. You know, could reverse today, could reverse tomorrow, or we could just continue to sell off. So I appreciate everyone being here. As always, and appreciate the support. Definitely hard to not do anything in that downtrend, but you know that's my goal is to stick to the strategy, right? That's what makes me money. I will be on the rest of the week until Thursday, not Friday, and we'll just see what happens. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow.